Today we're diving into the incredible connection between a novel so many of us love, The Book Thief, and a really terrifying chapter of history, the Nazi book burnings. We're going to see how words can literally build a world and how they can be weaponized to burn one right down.
You know, this quote right here, from the German poet Heinrich Heine, was written more than 100 years before the Nazis even existed. It is just chillingly prophetic, and it perfectly sets the stage for our story about a girl, some books, and a fire. So our story, it all revolves around a young German girl named Liesel Memminger. She's living through the rise of the Nazi regime, and she gets sent to live with foster parents on a street with the very ironic name of Himmel Street, which, is German for Heaven Street.
Now get this, when Liesel steals her first book, she can't even read. It's this impulsive act of grief, right? A way to just hold on to the very last memory of her little brother. But this one single object, this book she can't even understand, kicks off her incredible journey with the power of language.
And the story's narrator, who, by the way, is Death himself, makes this really dark observation. It's blunt, it's sweeping, and it connects all the destruction happening under Nazi rule. And it leads us right to this huge pivotal moment for both Liesel and Germany, the public book burning.
So that's the big question, right? To really get what's happening in that scene in The Book Thief, we have to look at the real history that inspired it. I mean, why would a whole regime go to all the trouble of burning books in giant public bonfires?
Well, this wasn't just some random act of mob violence. No. This was a meticulously planned, nationwide campaign. It was literally an assault on thought itself.
So, back in the spring of 1933, this highly organized campaign called the Action Against the Un-German Spirit just swept across the country. And here's the really insidious part. It was framed as a grassroots movement led by university students, but it was absolutely supported and pushed by the Nazi government. It gave this act of destruction a fake sense of intellectual legitimacy. So what exactly made a book un-German? I mean, just look at how broad the targets were. This wasn't just about getting rid of political opponents. It was about erasing any idea that went against Nazi ideology. Everything from Jewish authors and pacifism to the basic concepts of democracy and social equality.
And here's the crucial point. This was never just about destroying paper. It was a public spectacle, a psychological test. By getting ordinary people to watch, or even to participate in, the destruction of ideas, the regime was testing the waters. They were seeing how much the public would tolerate, and getting them ready for the next logical step, the persecution of people.
And this whole war on books was fueled by the exact same force that brought the Nazis to power in the first place: language. They understood that if you want to control a nation, you first have to control its story.
The novel puts it just perfectly. Death observes that Hitler's #1 weapon wasn't his army. It was his rhetoric, his uncanny ability to use words to plant seeds of hatred and fear, basically conquering the country from the inside out.
I mean, this slide really lays out the two sides of the coin. On one side, you have the Nazi ideal, a single, pure, brutal ideology. And on the other, everything they wanted to destroy. Free thought, compassion, pluralism, the whole lot. It was a war of ideas that was fought with fire. And this wasn't some hidden agenda. Just listen to this. In a speech that was broadcast all over Germany, propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels stood up and declared the end of what he called Jewish intellectualism. The message could not have been clearer. A world of diverse thought was being systematically replaced by a single, brutal one.
And of course, at the very center of this new order was one book that was meant to replace all the others, Hitler's own manifesto, Mein Kampf. It became the Bible of Nazi propaganda, the ultimate symbol of the ideology that was trying to consume the world.
Okay, so we've seen how words can destroy. But what about the other side of that? Because if words can be used as a weapon, they can also be used to resist. Let's zoom back into the novel and see how the characters fight back using the very thing the Nazis tried to eliminate.
So, imagine this. There's a huge bonfire celebrating Hitler's birthday, and Liesel spots a book that somehow survived the flames. She snatches it from the smoldering pile, hiding it under her shirt. Now, unlike that first book she stole, this is a conscious political act. It's her own small, personal rebellion against the Führer.
Okay, now this is a really clever thing the author does. He deliberately shifts the timeline. See, the real burnings were in 1933, right at the start of Nazi rule. But in the novel, it's around 1940, deep into the war. And that change is so important. It shows us that the destruction of culture wasn't just a one-time event. It was a constant, normalized part of everyday life.
And this leads to what might be the most powerful act of rebellion in the whole story. A Jewish man on the run, Max Vandenberg, actually uses a copy of Mein Kampf to survive. But he doesn't just stop there. He literally reclaims it. He paints over every single one of Hitler's hateful words, and then he creates his own story of friendship and hope right on top of them for Liesel.
And through this incredible act, Max isn't just saying these words to Liesel. He's proving them. He takes a book designed to spread death and hate, and he physically transforms it into a source of life and connection. He is literally replacing a narrative of hate with one of hope.
So, how does this battle between the destructive and the creative power of words finally play out? Well, in the book Thief, the answer is undeniable. Words don't just offer comfort, they offer actual salvation.
Think about it. Her foster father teaches her to read, and that's what forges their incredible bond. She reads out loud in a bomb shelter and brings a moment of peace to her terrified neighbors. And then, the mayor's wife gives her a blank notebook, empowering her to become a creator of stories, not just a thief.
And in the end, it's the simple act of writing that literally saves her life. The only reason she survives the bombing of Himmel Street is because she's in the basement writing her own book, The Book Thief. She survives because she is creating a story, preserving the very memories the Nazis were trying to burn into ash.
So at the end of the day, what's the big idea here? The takeaway from this whole story, both the real history and the novel, is this profound, two-sided nature of language. It can be a poison used to manipulate and destroy, but it can also be the antidote, the tool we use for connection, for resistance, and for building things back up. And that leaves us with a question to really chew on, doesn't it? A question that's just as relevant today. In our own world, which is just saturated with words, our social media, our news, everything, how do we choose to use them? How do we make sure our own stories are used to build and not to burn?